My Lords, I want to refer to Amendment 8 as proposed by the Noble Baroness Brinton and talked about by many people. I have some reservations and concerns about putting mental health on the face of the bill. Some caveats before I say that, though. I do absolutely agree that problems were created by lockdowns for many young people, and in fact it was one of the things that I was concerned about, the closure of schools, and certainly many young people were discombobulated by that. I'm also very concerned about the state of child and I can't remember what it stands for, child and adolescent mental health services, and would want to see them improved. That's no disputing that in any way at all. But what my concern is that there's, if anything, too much of a therapeutic ethos entered into schools in a way that I don't think is that helpful. I think if you look at the language that many primary school children use, they talk about anxiety and trauma and depression and stress, and you might think that that would counter what I'm saying. But as they're very small children, I think it implies that the preoccupations of adults have been adopted by very young children, and they're adopting the language of mental health to describe problems that they're going through. And as they get older, you will find that things like deadlines and exams and so on are now referred to as creating mental health episodes, stress and so on. And the language of PTSD has also entered into many sixth forms. Sixth formers saying that they're having PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder of all things, triggered by curriculum that they find offensive, very much aping the language of safe space and cancel culture activism in universities. It's going into schools as well. And I talk to teachers that I know, they say that there are well-being rooms and they're packed all the time. I do not think that's necessarily because everybody's got mental health problems, but because everything is seen through the problem of well-being. We're talking about schools where therapists are replacing the pastoral care that should come just straightforwardly through teachers. And I suppose the concern is that this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, where every problem, the problems ordinarily and usually associated, for example, with puberty, are seen through the prism of mental health. And I just don't want this to mean, as in fact many people who work in CAMS worry that it does mean, that young people now see themselves as vulnerable and become less resilient as a consequence. I think the elastic and ever-expanding definition of mental ill health can also have serious implications for people who are mentally ill and young. Because where you have an elastic definition, then serious incidents of people with mental health problems can become overlooked in a tidal wave of self-diagnosis and young people seeing themselves in that way. So I would at least ask us to pause and to consider whether the mental health crisis is all that it seems on the surface. And I certainly wouldn't want to see it on the face of legislation in this House.
The few children that need it into the specialist support. I give way.
Just by way of clarification, I certainly do not think it was as a consequence of COVID or lockdown. I was making the point I had seen that that had added to it, but I actually have been writing about the pathologisation of childhood for decades, and since I was a teacher. So my concern is a broader trend towards pathologising childhood and young people's experiences.
And I'm very grateful to the Noble Lady for that explanation.